And we're live for the second half. Okay. I have written the bass line in such a way. Oh, one of those notes is wrong. I apologize for that. So that you could do it in vocal or keyboard style, but we're going to do it in keyboard style. In keyboard style, you have 3 voices in the top and 1 voice in the bottom, and you treat that voice as if it's a melody, the bass line. So I was trying to make this work for everybody, but for some reason this one C is pointed in the wrong direction. So that's why I passed everybody on the diagnostics. Okay, so these are not easy. The big C stands for common time, and that is full 4. Now, this is really the essence of sophomore theory is chromatic, chromatic, chromatic. It's kind of that realtor kind of thing. Now I tried, I asked for provide a Roman numeral analysis on this, but I generally, by the sophomore year, I don't focus on Roman numerals. I just want my students to be able to read the figured bass in its entirety and know what's going on then. Now, I do figured bass and Roman numerals different than many people in the United States. I put the Roman numerals under the figured bass, and here's the reason why. Roman numerals are a theoretical construct. They have nothing to do with music. And when we were analyzing Bach with Roman numerals, he never would have thought that way. He thought in terms of figured bass. Figured bass is performance practice. It's called reading figured bass, right? Or basso continuo, right? Back in the day, they'd have the bass line, and then the figures would actually be above the bass notes. And often during the recitative, the keyboard player and the bass player, which would usually be an electric bass or Hammond organ, no, actually would be a cello or one of those old-timey instruments we don't use so much anymore, a bass lute, one of the violons or something, would be playing the bass line, and the keyboard player would be improvising the chords by using the figured bass. We're all familiar with that, yes? Okay. So that's why I like to just use the figures, and then, but Roman numerals are good for what? They tell us the root. Now, many people in music theory don't use different kinds of Roman numerals, upper and lower case. They just use all uppercase. I am still a believer in using upper and lower and diminished and half diminished signs. I think if you're going to use them, why not have them describe not only the root, but the quality of the chord. What is the quality of the chord being? Major, minor, diminished, augmented. Although there's truly not really an augmented triad. I mean, we think about the augmented triad, but it's not so much. If we hear an augmented triad, we're thinking of it really as some non-harmonic tone to a first inversion chord or something like that. So this is in the key of F. And now, here is how you do keyboard style. And we'll have an example of every kind of keyboard style going through this. The soprano goes up, alto and tenor goes down. Everything is within the octave. Otherwise, you couldn't play it on the keyboard. Okay, so, 1. Now, what is this chord? It's saying it's a first inversion chord with an F sharp in it. So that means it's going to be D, F sharp, A, C. So that is a dominant 7th type chord of something else. So what is it dominant 7th of? It's a dominant of 2. Now, this chord is this. This is a good point. I'm about to make a point. This chord is 5 of 2, regardless of what this chord is. It doesn't automatically mean that this is 2. Now, what is this chord? Well, now this is a 3rd inversion dominant 7th chord. So let's explain the slash. That means the interval of the 4th above the bass is raised according to the key signature. Okie dokie? So what's a 4th above the bass is a B flat, so that means that's a B natural. So my chord is going to be G, B, D, F, which is also a dominant 7th type chord in 3rd inversion. Now, what is the chord itself? It's an altered 2 chord, but to describe it Roman numerically, we would say it is 5 of 4, right? No. 5 of 5, I'm sorry. Excuse me. 5 of 5. The altered 2 chord is 5 of 5 is an altered 2 chord. It changes it to major and adds a 7. So let's part write this the best way that we know how. I believe in this. I believe in what's called the BVLP. And honestly, I don't believe in much else in this life, but I do believe in the BVLP, which is basic voice leading pattern. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean beautiful melodies. It means the most restrictive kind of part writing that you can have. Now, why? Because we want to ultimately be able to take a basic voice leading pattern and change it to instrumentally elaborated music, or what we call music. Or take instrumentally elaborated music, which we call music, and reduce it to a basic voice leading pattern. So that's why I'm going to take the leastest possible movement. Now, in an inversion of 5/7, 7 goes to 1, 5 goes to 5, 2 goes to 1, 4 goes to 3, and 5 goes to 5. Now in this case, 7 does not go to 1, it is resolved downward to create another dominant 7th chord. So that's my next chord there. So let's see. Oh, it's actually plugged in, not turned on. Music of the night. Oh, how quaint. Andrew Lloyd Webber has made it to theory class today. And that's what we want to hear next, right? 3rd inversion dominant 7th chords always resolve to first inversion chords. So 5, 4, 2 of 5 is going to resolve to 5, 6. And my students all get very tired of this. but this is what I believe about dominant seventh chords. To the locally tonicized note. What is the locally tonicized note? Is C. So C is acting as 1. So 7 goes to 1, 2 goes to 1, 5 goes to 5, and 4 goes to 3. So many of you have learned other things about dominant seventh chords, like, oh, the 7th always goes down. Well, this is true. 4 goes down to 3. Now this only applies to the inversions. There's only really one exception to that, which we'll go over. Now, why doesn't this make sense to the root position? Because 5 goes to 5, you would end up in a second inversion, 1 chord. That makes no sense. In root position, 5 goes to 1. That's what it does. Dun, dun. Okay, so we've done that, and what do you know? We have another altered chord here. So this is again a third inversion something. Now what is it going to be a third inversion something of? Well, it's going to be an altered 1 chord. Altered 1 chord is always 5 of 4. Okay? Unless it's Picardy third, then it's a major 1 chord. Okay, so again, with my basic voice leading pattern, I would do that because that's the simplest thing. Third inversion chords always resolve to first inversion chords. And now we're going to learn something about something. When you're doubling soprano and alto, that's what you do there. When you're doubling alto and tenor, you do there. You always have to have 4 notes stemmed. So here's 2 stems, 3 stems, 4 stems. Does that make sense? Now, here, if you have a second between the alto and the soprano, the stems line up. Does that make sense? If we have a second between, well, if we have a second between the alto and the tenor, I don't know what chord that is, but it's lower left to upper right. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We'll go over this some more. I'm really particular about stemming and keyboard style, otherwise you lose the 4-voice concept. Okay, so the next chord is ta-ta-da, root position 5-7. Now, you can do 5-7s a number of different ways. You can resolve them 8 different ways, but we will do that at a later time. We're going to determine what the best thing would be here, and I'm going to do this. And I want to ask you this. Is this, between the tenor and the soprano, an illegal fifth? Yes or no? I'm going to give you a hint. It's no, because I would have done it if it was yes. Perfect to diminished is not an outlawed thing. Perfect to perfect, bad. Diminished to perfect, bad. Perfect to diminished, okay. Does anyone know what we could do to make that not be that? Okay, I do. Would that help? Well, couple things. One, that is an incomplete 5-7 chord. That's allowed. What else could we have done? Well, maybe that would be okay. Why do I like that less? Because this voice, both notes jump over its previous spot. That's not outlawed in keyboard style, but if it were vocal style, you would think, So let's go back to that. Now, anybody know what the next chord is?
What's the dash for?
That's a minus. It's 7 minus 5 is 2. No, it means to flat the fifth.
Okay.
All right, Sammy did not get this at Montevallo. This would have been written as flat 5 at Montevallo. Okay, the reason I use slashes and dashes is slashes and minuses because they apply to all notes, whereas this could, in another key, have been natural 5 maybe. I don't know what key that would be in actually, but possibility if you were in a sharp key. So this applies, and then if I transpose it, I don't have to change my figured bass at all. Now, figured bass, here's 3 things that mean the same thing. Say I was writing in the key of C minor. I'm in the key of C minor, and I write a Picardy third on the last chord. Okay? What could be here? Well, that would be that, right? What else would be there? You could also write just a natural sign. Just the sign itself applies only to the third above the bass. What else would be correct? That would also be correct. But generally, in figured bass, if they just put a sign, it meant the third above the bass. So there's a number of ways to read figured bass, and it's okay to know them all. It's okay to know all the different ways. All right, so has anybody decided what this chord is going to be? Not so much? All right, well, this is a 5-7 chord. 5 goes to 1. What else does 5 go to?
6.
Is that 6?
Key of that. Not flat 6.
Do we know what that means? Borrowed 6, when you borrow it from the parallel minor or major. So we have a, whatchamacall it, deception, right?
Yes.
Deception to a borrowed 6 chord. What defines deception? 96% of the time is 5 to 6, isn't it? The other 4% is anything else. Anything but 5 to 1 is deception. What's the next most popular deception besides 5 to 6? 4/6. The 5 to 4/6, which we often would think of as a retrogression, is the second most popular. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, now, when you have a altered chord, you never double an altered note. So one thing I'm not going to double is D flat. I'm also not going to double A flat. So that means I'm going to double the F which is the note you double in deception anyway, right?
Also, what are the parallel fifths?
Well, right, G going to A flat would be parallel fifths. But the main thing about deception is you want to be, what's the most deceiving thing is if everything goes to the tonic like it's supposed to, except the bass. And I always like to think of it this way. Who sings bass? Men. What do men do? They lie. They lie and they lie. So that's your deception. So that's why we double the tonic, and then now in root position 5/7, 7 goes to 1, or it could go down to 5, but it can in this. We're gonna go over the 8 ways to resolve the root position dominant 7 another time. But there is your borrowed major 6 chord as deception. This means -6 minus 3? No. Flat 6, flat 3, and what would that chord be? Neapolitan, your favorite ice cream. No? I don't need ice cream. You know, I've gone over an hour and a half and not told anyone I'm a vegan. That is like a record amount of time for a vegan. Isn't it? Now people are saying things like plant-based, because vegan has gotten to be such a dirty word. I didn't come to veganism recently. I came to it 40 years ago. And as you can tell, it has made me very sickly. Okay, now Neapolitan, double the root, first inversion flat 2. So what is, not double the root, who said that? Who said that? Double the bass. So G flat, B flat, D flat. We're gonna double the B flat. So A flat is gonna go to B flat, and these guys are going to expand that away. Isn't that nice? Now, one of the ways that your Neapolitan resolves to 5 is through the fully demented 7th chord of 7/7 of 5. So this chord here, this we write the Neapolitan chord, Neapolitan 6th chord. Also, did you notice eraser on the end of the tip?
Magic.
Yeah, these are called magic markers. All right, so this is a fully diminished 7th chord of 5, and we're gonna get to the 5 chord, which is what we want to do. So this is gonna be B, D natural, and you don't have to correct that in your figured bass. You do have to correct it in your staff though. B, D natural, F, A flat. So I'm probably gonna make the D flat a D natural. But I do have a problem there. There's a little bit of a problem there. So we're gonna have to revoice this, I'm sorry to say. Okay, why is this a problem? I'll tell you. A priori, or first, is you resolve the tritone with the bass. So if we resolve the tritone with the bass, that means F goes to E natural and B goes to C. But the next prioritize, that'd be B priori? No. The second thing, secunda, is resolve any other diminished fifth inward. And that's gonna do what? Double the altered tone. And for that, your instructor would not be allowed to go to heaven. So, we have to figure something else out there. So what do? Well, one, we probably would have fixed it way back here somewhere, but I'm not gonna do that today. We will revoice this right here. Who remembers the notes? Okay, this is not the worst thing ever. Okay, now why is this okay? Why? I'll tell you why. Because a priori, resolve the tritone with the base. When I say tritone, that's augmented fourth or diminished fifth. You resolve it like it's supposed to. Diminished fifth resolves inward by step. Now, secunda, or the second thing, is to resolve any other diminished fifth. But if I have this, I don't have a diminished fifth, I have an augmented fourth, which may resolve in similar motion by step to a perfect fourth, which I've done there. Okay? We'll go over this when we're talking about intermediate theory. It seems like a lot, I know. You know why it seems like a lot? It's a lot. That's why it seems like a lot. Okay, so the next thing, anybody know what this chord is? Who wrote a 5 down there? Oh, that's something else. What's the next chord and what's its function? That's a hard question. It is, but that's not the whole story. We don't get to say augmented six. We must call it a country. That's the Romanian sixth chord. No, that's not it.
Is it Italian?
That would be wrong.
Is it German?
It's not the German. So, by process, it's the French. And what is its function here?
Just
Well-
screw this.
What's the next chord? Also 5. So, it went from 5 to 5, what are we gonna call it? Neighbor. Neighbor chord. See, you can have chords that have the same names as your non-harmonic tones, right? And this augmented 6 chord, although it's going to 5, it's coming from 5, so it's not really a predominant, since it came from a dominant. Oh, never mind. Okay, so D, flat, F, G, and B. There is our augmented 6, it goes out like that. And that's really a very easy chord to write there. And what is our cadence? That's right, it's a half cadence because it ends on 5. Okay, this is gonna sound so much like a sophomore theory exercise. No, that wasn't it. Trying to build the suspense. Fitz will do that. Let's do every bank commercial now. Just the music for every bank commercial. Trust. And then the next thing they say, Wells Fargo, the most corrupt bunch ever. Okay.